During the 500 years of Muslim rule in Bengal from 1203 to 1757, the social fabric of Bengal seems to have been in a relatively healthy state. It is quite clear that there was extensive social mixing between the Hindus and Muslims until the 19th century. Many Muslims learned Sanskrit and composed literature with Hindu themes. There were many aspects in which the Sufi and the Vaishnav faiths were very similar to each other. There were many shrines and mazars across the entire region where members of both communities prayed and worshipped local deities like Shottanarayan, Shottapir and Dukkhin Rai. Hussain Shah's reign from 1493 to 1519 in particular is noted as, like Akbar, he made an attempt to develop an inclusive style, treating members of all communities with respect and bringing on board talented Hindus like Rup and Sanatana Goswami as senior state officers. Although during his raids against the Kingdom of Odisha, some temples of that region were attacked, it is to be noted that Sri Chaitanya's Bhakti movement grew and prospered while Hussain Shah was on the throne of Bengal. The contemporary Hindu attitude towards Shah is reflected in the following verses from the Bengali Mahabharata composed by Parameshwar.
Nripati Hussain Shah hoy Mahamati Pancham Gore tar Param Shukhati Astra Shastri Shupandit Mohima Apar Kuli Kale Hono Jano Krishna Avatar.
Some scholars believe that there was extensive damage done to Hindu temples during the 5 centuries of Muslim rule, based on the fact that no temples from the Pala era are found standing anywhere in Bengal, whereas contemporary temples in Odisha like Konark, Lingaraj and Puri Jagannath still stand tall in all their glory. Historian Richard M. Eaton has documented a total of 80 instances of temple destruction by Islamic forces in India between 1193 and 1756, out of which only 7 instances were recorded in the eastern states of Bengal, Bihar, Assam and Odisha, including the destruction of Nalanda and Odantapuri Buddhist centers by Bakhtiyar Khalji in 1202, and the attack on the Jagannath temple in Puri in 1359 and 1556. Bengal was formally annexed into the Mughal Empire following the defeat of Sultan Daud Khan Karani by Akbar's army at the Battle of Rajmahal in 1576. Rajmahal represented for the Mughals the halfway house at the eastern edge of Bihar that bore influences of the drier lateritic zone and also of the Gangetic alluvial terrain. The Mughals developed the habit of stopping at Rajmahal to reorient themselves before moving on further east. This was the last familiar climatic region of comfort for them. The Mughals embarked upon their penetration of the eastern delta sometimes in the latter half of the 16th century and took less than a century to reach the edge of the deltaic plains of Bengal. The Mughal progression into Bengal initially came to a halt as they were in awe of the land of unknown topography, torrential downpour, heat and humidity, mesh of waterways, marsh, impenetrable forestland, tangled vegetation interspersed with tracts of mucky, wet rice fields. In course of time, they were to innovate and adapt their military operations in accordance with the ecology of the new region and emerged as conquerors of the Bengal Delta by early 17th century. The Mughals had started their progress towards Bengal by land-bound cavalcades, but by the time they pushed themselves to the interior towards the edges of eastern Bengal along the burgeoning Padma, They revamped their war strategies and graduated into a seasoned riverine and naval power. They built efficient fleets suited to repel the great naval fighters of the East, like the Portuguese of the Delta, the local zamindars, and the mighty Arakan. Politically, a new phase in the history of the region began following its annexation as a Mughal province in the 16th century during the reign of Emperor Akbar. Bengal became more fully integrated with the Indian Empire, which stimulated exports of manufactured goods to the court in North India. There was economic prosperity facilitated by agrarian reforms and exploitation of forested hinterlands.
The virgin land of fresh alluvium that awaited the touch of the plough found entrepreneurs in North Indian adventurous Muslims and also some local landowners. They mobilized the non-agricultural dwellers of the area to reclaim land out of large tracts of forest, and they were encouraged to start paddy cultivation. The leaders were often patronized by the emerging Mughal power to tame the wilderness into revenue generating land, and they were also used as vehicles of conversion. A new colony of comparatively more populous and prosperous area than central and western Bengal had emerged in eastern Bengal.
Following the gradual erosion of the Mughal power, in 1717, Nawab Murshid Quli Khan, hereditary Mughal Subedar, virtually took over as the independent ruler of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha from his seat in Murshidabad.
Murshidabad on the Bhagirathi is famous as the last capital city of the independent Bengal before the British rule was entrenched there in 1757. Contrary to the general belief that Murshid Quli Khan had established Murshidabad as the capital of Bengal Nizamat in approximately 1704 AD, it had established itself as a significant administrative and financial town in around 1670. Taking advantage of the cracks in the Mughal imperial edifice, in the late 17th century, the Mughal Suba of Bengal gradually metamorphosed into the Nizamat of Murshidabad under generations of Nazims, the most significant of them being Murshid Quli Khan and Alivardi Khan.
This was a time of great affluence, and Bengal continued to contribute the largest share of funds to the imperial treasury in Delhi. The Nawabs, backed by bankers such as Jagat Seth, became the financial backbone of the Mughal court. During the 18th century, the Nawabs of Bengal were among the wealthiest rulers in the world. The Nawabs of Bengal oversaw a period of proto-industrialization. The Bengal-Bihar-Odisha triangle was a major production center for cotton, muslin cloth, silk cloth, shipbuilding, gunpowder, saltpeter and metalworks. Factories were set up in Murshidabad, Dhaka, Patna, Sonargaon, Chittagong, Rajshahi, Qasim Bazar, Balasore and Hooghly, among other cities. The economic affluence of the region attracted the Danish, Dutch, French and English East India companies to set up economic hubs in the province. On 24 September 1599, while William Shakespeare was pondering a draft of Hamlet in his house downriver from the Globe, across the river a motley group of Londoners was gathering in a rambling, half-timbered, Tudor building. Led by the Lord Mayor himself, the group of 218 merchants, privateers and city officials petitioned Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth for permission to form a company to trade in the East Indies and other territories afar. The East India Company came into being when the Royal Charter was received a year later. In India, Emperor Jahangir granted Thomas Roe, the royal emissary, a charter enabling the company to set up a factory at Surat and other locations in 1612. Over the following century and a half, the East India Company gradually established itself as a major geopolitical force in the subcontinent. In 1757, under the command of Robert Clive, the English East India Company won a famous victory in Plassey over Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah through a combination of superior artillery and even more superior chicanery, involving the betrayal of the Nawab by one of his close nobles, Mir Jafar. On 29th June 1757, as escorted by Robert Clive, Mir Jafar took the throne in Bengal. A procession carrying the body of Siraj-ud-Dowlah on the back of an elephant was moving on the main road in Murshidabad. At the same time, people on the riverfront saw a flotilla of 200 boats sailing for Calcutta carrying the first installment of the British loot. Clive was able to transfer the princely sum of £2.5 million, £250 million in today's money, the entire contents of the Nawab's treasury, to the company's coffers in England as the spoils of the conquest. Clive personally received a huge sum of money and a zamindari as a gift, so much so that on his first return to England he took home £234,000, £23 million in today's money, making him one of the richest men in Europe. Through the next 2 centuries, under the Company and the Crown, under successive Governors-General and Viceroys, and through a series of reforms like the Regulating Act of 1773, the Permanent Settlement Act of 1793, the Doctrine of Lapse of 1848 and others, the loot and exploitation of Bengal and India continued unabated. India's share of the world economy, which was 23% in the mid-1700s, plummeted to 3% by the time the British departed India. In the mid-18th century, exports of Bengal's textiles to Egypt, Turkey, Persia, Java, China, Japan and Europe amounted to around 16 million rupees annually. Silk exports accounted for another 6.5 million rupees annually. By stopping payments in pounds, cutting out foreign markets, imposing high tariff of 70 to 80% and flooding of the market with cheap British-made fabric, the company broke the back of the textiles industry of Bengal. In addition, soldiers of the company went about smashing the looms of Bengali weavers and breaking their thumbs. Lord William Bentinck himself wrote that the bones of the cotton weavers were bleaching the plains of India. The population of Dhaka, once the great centre of muslin production, fell from several lakhs in 1760 to about 50,000 by the 1820s. The destruction of industry drove hordes of disenfranchised workers to agriculture beyond levels the land could sustain, driving down wages and causing large-scale rural poverty. As the company's officers like Clive, Warren Hastings, Thomas Pitt and so many others made staggering amounts of personal fortune, and the stock of the English East India Company soared in the London Stock Exchange, enriching shareholders, many of whom were members of the British Parliament, millions perished in the Bengal countryside during the famine of 1770. During the 100 years from 1757, Bengal was to witness a large number of localized, spontaneous movements against the company's rule, including the Sannyasi and Fakir disturbances of 1770 to 1772, the Dhalbhum uprisings of the same time, the movement of Titumir at Barashat in 1799, the Coal Rebellion in 1831, the Santhal Revolt during 1856 to 1857, and many others. All these movements were to culminate in the First War of Independence in 1857. The uprising of 1857 sparked off at the Barakpur cantonment near Calcutta and spread to large parts of North and Central India, and ultimately brought India under the direct rule of the British Crown by ending the century-long de facto rule of the company.